Some people say, and yes, it was totally me, I said this, that there are no bad warbands in Warcry. But it's very true that there are some that struggle a lot more than others, either intrinsically because their mechanics just aren't all that good, or that their fighters are too expensive, their stats are too weak, whatever. But you do get fans of those warbands, and that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to look at the 3 absolute worst warbands in Warcry. We're going to take a fresh look at them. We're going to do some modern list building with them. And hopefully by the end of it, we'll have some decent warbands that will be able to at least get you some wins while you're playing your games. Okay, when I talk about the worst warbands in the game, I'm of course talking about Pyregheists, the Askurgan Trueblades, and the Claws of Karanak. We've seen it time and time again. Some people like to pick up these warbands, and they just don't deliver for a number of different reasons. I think for the Pyregeists, they are almost there, but their whole gimmick with the Pyre tokens, that kind of doesn't work out when you try and apply it in practice. Askurgan Trueblades look like they could have been really cool, but I think they suffer very much from that mid-range pointing. They got the high movement that they're paying for. They got decent damage, which they're paying for, but they don't have all that many attacks, which is a really big problem. And then we have the Claws of Karanak, who I think they pay too much for their basic chaff models. They can't really capitalize on their whole gimmick, which is supposed to be a pack tactic style. I activate my guy, then use a double activate another guy, get to do a whole bunch of activations without giving your opponent any agency. That in practice doesn't work all too well in Warcry. So yeah, that's why they're struggling, and they pay a lot for those abilities that ultimately they don't end up using. So starting with the Pyregeists, let's go through them. Let's look at their abilities. Let's look at some of their notable fighters, and then we will go into some list building to try and build some solid lists out of these factions. Starting with them, Deacon of Flames is actually legitimately good. The one with the Balefire Tongs, I think it's called, it's got very good stats for 190 points. It can do a whole bunch of damage. It's got Soul Blaze, which is an in-faction Calthea Zandire style. I'm going to get a whole bunch of guys to activate ability, which is good. I think they are overcosted on the Belguard and the Flame Wraiths. Agonizing Penance, which is their quad, is potentially really, really good. It's like a move that does a whole bunch of extra damage, which is nice. But the problem is, and the main issue with them, is that they are paying a lot for the Fly Room mark, and they are paying a lot for their Pyre token mechanic. And as we've talked about this already, the mechanic itself doesn't play out as you would want it to work when you're actually playing your games. I've played several games with Pyregheists now, and I can't remember a single time where I've willfully wanted to use an ability to create a Pyre token, as opposed to just using something like a double to do more damage, right? That's the actual problem. The potential benefits of using Pyre tokens are way overshadowed by the hoops that you have to jump through to actually get there. Looking at the fighters of interest, I think there are basically 3 of them that you want to be focusing on. Deacon of Flames, already talked about, 5/3/5 more damage profile, it's really good. Give it a +1 attack blessing, like a 4/5/3/4. It's solid, it's very good. I like the 3/4 damage profile on this. It makes it extremely consistent at what it does. It's got that toughness 5, it's got the 20 wounds, so it's good. I like the Deacon of Flames. I think it actually works as a decent ally in some of your other death warbands, which means that it's not a total write-off. The Belguard, we are looking at 2 flavors. You've got the halberds and then you've got the flails. Personally, I like Belguard with flails. I like their range. I like that increased strength. Belguard with flails is what we're going to be going for. It's got the toughness, very good. And then we've got the Flame Wraiths and the Torch Wraiths. The problem with these fighters is that their stats just aren't all that good, right? You're paying 100 points, 115 points for essentially either 1/4 damage profile or 1/3 damage profile at range. It's just not good enough at that price point. So when we're doing our list building, we need to take all of this into account, and we need to figure out, okay, how are we going to get around these negatives, and what are we going to do in order to build them? Now, I'm going to come out here and say that I know that you guys absolutely hate it when I just say, all right, here's my Bladeborn and all the chaff that come in with Bladeborn, and then we're only going to put in 1 or 2 fighters. So I'm not doing that. So you guys need to bear in mind that this isn't the best list that you can build. It's serviceable though, and if you actually want to play the faction, this is what I think the lists would end up looking like, as opposed to just going, here's my hero plus guys, okay? So that's where we are here. To start with, I think that because the Pyregeists are generally expensive, what they're going to want to benefit from is some kind of resurrection caddy. Nighthawk have a whole bunch of these. They got things like the Wielder of the Blade, they got things like the Briar Queen, they got things like the Krulgast Cruciator, all sorts of things. I've chosen the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed because the role that I think that Pyregheists need the most is some kind of tanky brawler that can hold up things, get your fighters in place, have them being able to either generate Pyre tokens or just fight in general. So I've chosen the Knight of Shrouds. I've given it the +1 crit Divine Blessing, so it becomes a 4/4/2/5. As of the April FAQ, the Knight of Shrouds can use Frightful Touch now, so when it's swinging with Frightful Touch, it's going 4/4/5/5. Very good profile. Alternatively, what it's able to do, it's got toughness 4, it's got 28 wounds, it's got the double stolen hours that allows it to heal up for all of the damage that it did during its activation. That's potentially very good because your Knight of Shrouds, it can run into an entire enemy deployment group, tank all the hits, attack back, heal up all the damage. That's just a useful thing to have in general. And if you're going to be running a smaller warband, like I think Pyregheists end up playing, is probably going to be key to your strategy. We've got a couple of Deacon of Flames with the Tongs here, both +1 attack blessing, as we've talked about. Very solid. This list actually has 3 proper fighty threats with the 2 Deacon of Flames and the Knight of Shrouds. That's something that can carry games by itself. The ability to look at chaff units and almost delete them from the board isn't something that you should overlook. Even if the rest of the warband seems a bit weak in comparison, that ability alone, I think, is very much worthwhile. You've got 1 proper target for each of your hammer, dagger, shield deployment groups, which means that whatever's on the battlefield to begin with, you'll be able to at least do something. And then we've got Trio of Flame Wraiths. They go 1 with each Deacon and 1 with each Knight of Shrouds. They're basically there to float around in the backlines, go and get your objectives, go and get your treasure, whilst the Deacons and the Knight of Shrouds really act as your big distraction pieces. The Knight of Shrouds, because it's got that 28 wounds, it gives it a lot of sticking power, which means that there's more option later on in the game for you to be able to use its Resurrect Triple, bring back your Deacons, bring back your Flame Wraiths, and make the warband feel like it's a larger warband, even just by virtue of being able to bring guys back to life. So I think that's very useful. If you wanted to play pure Pyregeists, now they have a very good battle trait. Their battle trait is at the end of each battle round, if you're pure Pyregeists, roll a dice for every single one of your Pyre tokens, and if 3 or more, you get a wild dice. With pure Pyregeists, you want to be generating tokens, and you want to be getting more use out of that ability, because later on, turns 3 and 4, a lot of wild dice means that you have the option to control the game more by choosing who goes first or second, and you have the option to build more of your very good triples and quads that you actually have in the warband. So with that in mind, I think we're going to go double Deacon of Flames. Again, +1 attack blessing, real tanky, real punchy, they'll always do good for you. Balefire Guard, they're the 130 point guys. You can play with any. Build a Balefire Guard. Like I said, I like the flails. I think it's pretty good. They also have toughness 5, which is nice. They got the 12 wounds. The 12 wounds will not keep them around for all that long, which is why I really think what you want is a Resurrect Caddy. But in the absence of that, they do have the double that gives them all +1 toughness, the Balefire and the Deacon. So that's something that we might be able to use. And then on top of that, a Trio of Flame Wraiths. This is a little bit bigger, but if I was playing pure Pyregheists, this is the way I'd go. You effectively try and make Pyre tokens. Your Pyregeists aren't going to be tanky enough just to run into things, take the hit. So what you want to be aiming to do is holding back a little bit. You do have fly, despite it only being movement 4 fly. So you can jump up onto pieces of terrain and use that to stretch out the life of your Geists and then attack when you need to and when you've got easy and free kills, as opposed to just running in to try and tie up things. Guys, still, 53% of you are not subscribed. Come on, help me out here. The goal this year is to get to 3,000 subs. We can do it together. We can continue growing. It means a lot to me, and it really gives me the encouragement to carry on and keep making this kind of content for you. So yeah, if you want to subscribe, let's go. We'll go forward together. Moving on to the Claws of Karanak. Okay, so what have they got? Strength 4 across the warband. That's fine. I think it's a lot worse now than it used to be, because you used to see a lot more toughness 3 chaff. That's fallen on the wayside a little bit. So now you're seeing a lot more toughness 4, toughness 5 things walk in. There's a resurgence of Stormcast. There's a resurgence of just things with shields because people want their fighters to stick around longer. So strength 4 isn't as good as it used to be. Now the problem is, That strength 4 trades in toughness. So they're sitting on toughness 3 for basically everyone apart from a hero and the big dog. This is a problem because it means that, okay, sure, you're going to be winning things on 4s most of the time, but other things are going to be winning you on 3s because if you're looking at toughness 4 infantry more or less, they usually have strength 4 to go with it. So that's a problem. You do have movement 5, but in my experience, to have a faster warband like this work, you need a lot more guys than your opponent. And we're going to see your Blood Whelps, they're sitting at 90 points for not amazing stats. So that's a problem. I've already talked about Pack Hunters. It's possible it could be strong. No one's been able to crack it yet, so that's not really something that I'm going to be focusing on. However, they are paying through the nose for that ability, so that's an issue. So we're going to have to try and get around that. Maybe we can capitalize on the Pack Lord because the Pack Lord is very good. The big dog, the Hound of Wrath, that recently got a buff in April. So maybe we can look at that. We look at the Pack Lord and we can do something there. Okay, which fighters have we got? I said already, Pack Lord, Hound of Wrath. There's also the Brutalizer with Featherblades, I think is genuinely pretty good. But 120 points with toughness 3, that's a problem. It's got generic okay damage, but I think it's a bit too expensive for what we're going to be bringing. I really like the Hound of Wrath now, 170 points. 5424 is a decent enough damage profile. You can put Divine Blessings onto it to make it do more damage, make it either strength 5 or give it 3 base damage. 3 base damage. I've been messing around with Calthea Zandile with the base damage upgrade, and I really like that, so maybe that's where you want to go with the Hound of Wrath. It does make it like 200 points. That's just something we have to live with. The Hound also has the Flaming Breath double, which I think is actually really good. Every enemy fighter within 1 inch will take just 3 damage if you roll a 4 or more. I think that's decent, especially against hordes. So maybe this is where we're going to go. If you need to fight against hordes, we got Hounds. They can breathe fire on them. If you need to fight against more elite things, we still have Hounds. We can slap more damage onto them. So I think that's where we want to focus on. First one, Pure Claws of Karanak. We got the Pack Lord, which we're going to take, 2 Hound of Wrath, and 5 Blood Whelps with Claw Flails. I like to take the Claw Flails over the other option because they are range 3, helps them survive a little bit longer, especially with that toughness 3, and pushes out their effective threat range. They do have that movement 5, so they go up to 8-inch range with those Claw Flails. This also allows you to get a slightly bigger warband on the table. You've got the double Hound of Wrath who can do a bit of punching. You've got the Pack Lord who can also do a bit of punching. Is it the best? Probably not. But at least it's serviceable in that it's got the numbers to be able to do objectives, the numbers to be able to do treasure. It's got a little bit of an answer into hordes. It's got a little bit of an answer into more elite things. The second option is basically if you wanted to throw the best allies into Claws of Karanak, this is a list that would actually win games, right? Why? Because you got Vexmore, you have a Varangard, you're going to give Vexmore +1 attack, you're going to give the Varangard +1 attack, you got Blood Whelps just to fill out the roster, and you've got the Pack Lord who will do a whole bunch of fighting. He's got +1 base damage. Yes, it's only 6 guys, but the amount of weight that a Varangard and Vexmore pull, I think you'll be absolutely fine. So if I was looking to play them in a competitive sense, this is the way that you've got to go. You just throw the best things into the warband, and it'll work. I guarantee you that it'll work. Finally, the Askurgan Trueblades. They are a mid-ranged vampire warband. Some of the coolest sculpts that Games Workshop have done. Unfortunately, they don't live up to the idea of, here are my vampires, they're all going to be really good, they're all going to be really fast, like it's going to be an elite warband, that kind of thing. It doesn't live up to that. For a number of reasons. They have the strength, they have the damage, but they just don't have enough attacks to be able to capitalize on them. The Askurgan Exemplar is generally one of the best generic damage dealers that you can get out of the Deathbound Alliance, but it's been overshadowed recently with the Wielder of the Blade, several other Nighthaunt heroes. There are all sorts of things that kind of do what the Exemplar does, but better now. The abilities aren't all to write home about, so you're basically just bringing them 4 generic stats. The 3 best fighters that you have, the Exemplar, the Ascetic with Charnel Mace, and the Acolyte with Throat Taker. I like the Acolyte with Throat Taker very much for the same reasons we have the Blood Whelp. It's only toughness 3, it's 12 wounds. You're seeing the pattern here into the problems with these 90-point fighters, but movement 5 and range 3 means it can do things. It does have strength 4 also, and that 4 crit. So you can move 5, range 3, start whipping things about. At least you'll be safe from 1 attack action because your opponent's going to have to move attack you if they want to get at your acolytes. The aesthetic with Channel Mace, this is the thing. I like his profile. Strength 6 with 3-4 damage. I'm all about that. That's great. Toughness 4 is okay. 15 wounds is okay for 115 points. That's not bad. Movement 5, that's okay. The problem is that attack. So, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be looking at different kinds of allies and different kinds of fighters to be able to capitalize on those attacks, either make them better or get more attacks or anything like that. We'll see what we can build. Very much in a similar way to the Claws of Karanak build, this is if I was bringing pure Askurgan Trueblades. We're going to bring double Exemplar because they are just the best damage dealers in the list. Double Ascetic with Charnel Mace. Yeah, I said they only got 2 attacks, but hey, you can't be picky. And then a whole bunch of Acolytes with Throat Takers. Again, it's not the best, but I think it's big enough to do what it wants to do, and it will do okay in most mission types. A pair of Exemplars jumping onto something is pretty scary, and that thing will more than likely fall over. So you need to support your characters with your other chaff units to keep them alive and to give your opponent disincentives to just run into your exemplars and try and squish them. Maybe if you support them properly with your acolytes and with your ascetics, it'll put them in 2 minds to do that. But that's what I would bring solo vampires. What I would actually play them is a little bit closer to how we played Pyregheists. I'd put a Nighthaunt character in there for Resurrect. In this case, I've chosen the Knight of Shrouds. Why? Because it makes the points work. Again, I like the crit blessing on the Knight of Shrouds. It has access to Frightful Touch. It can run into a thing, use a crit, suddenly it's swinging for 5-5 damage. So that's pretty good. It also has the Stolen Hours double, so it can hit things and get the wounds back. So I quite like that. Then we're going to be bringing Prince Duval as a Bladeborn ally. Why are we doing this? Because he has a triple that gives +1 attack to everything within 6 inches. An extra attack on the Exemplar, extra attack on that Knight of Shrouds is pretty good. We've got the Ascetics with Charnel Mace giving them +1 attack, makes them go to a 3-6, 3-4, which is a very good damage profile. And again, a pair of Acolytes with Throat Takers just to fill out the numbers. We're looking at 7 fighters here, so it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit, I think, more stable than the Pyregheists version. And to be honest, I don't mind it as a warband. I think it's decidedly mid-range. It's missing a big, super punchy piece. But outside of something like Flesh Eater Courts or maybe even Soulblight Gravelords, that's something that Death is just missing in general. If I could get like a Vargulf in here, I'd do that, but I can't. But yeah, this is how I build it. So you get the Resurrect, you get the attack boost, you've got some interesting fast pieces and some options with the Knight of Shrouds and Prince Duval. They can all fight. So you got a whole bunch of guys who are middling, should wail on normal chaff units, but otherwise it might struggle if you come against something really big and tanky, something like a Fulminate Crusher or like one of the Minotaurs, something like that. Okay, and that's it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful to you as we explore some of the worst warbands in the game, just as an idea as to how you want to list build for them and the kinds of allies and the kinds of strategies that you want to look into to get the most out of those warbands if there's something that you really want to play and that you really like the look of. As always, if you like what you see, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section below what you thought about these lists. If you have any ideas for either of these 3 factions, that's something I'd like to hear. If you've got any interesting allies or any interesting builds, slap that down in the comments. We'll have a good talk about it. But yes, anyway, thank you very much for watching. As always, I've been Itan, this has been Musings, and we will see you next time.